Ever feel trapped? Like stuck on a path someone else chose for you?
Ugh, yeah. I can imagine that's got to be frustrating.
Well, now imagine that feeling magnified 1,000 times over, with like billions of dollars and the whole world watching your every move. That's the story we're diving into today.
Sounds intense. Like a modern day fairy tale, but like the really messed up kind.
Exactly. It's the story of Sheikha Latifah, daughter of Dubai's ruler. She's made multiple attempts to escape her father's control.
Wow. You sent over some articles and research on this, and I gotta say, it's a wild story. The more I read, the more questions I had.
Right. So to start, for those who might not know, we're talking about Sheikha Latifah, daughter of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. He's the ruler of Dubai and also the prime minister of the UAE.
A powerful guy. So this isn't just a family squabble, right? We're talking global implications here.
Exactly. It's about power, wealth, and international diplomacy, all tangled up in this one woman's quest for freedom.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around. I mean, she was born into unimaginable wealth and privilege, yet she's risking everything for the basic freedoms most of us take for granted. Like, choosing your own path, speaking your mind, just living your life on your own terms.
And to really grasp this story, we need to understand the kind of power her father, Sheikh Mohammed, wields, not just in Dubai, but globally.
Oh, yeah, he's got connections, close ties with Western governments, a major player in international business. His influence goes way beyond the UAE.
So she's not just escaping a physical location, but an entire system designed to keep her silent and controlled.
Exactly. It's not just about escaping a gilded cage, it's about challenging an entire power structure. And get this, her story isn't unique in her family. Her older sister, Shamsa, tried a similar escape years earlier.
Oh, wow, I remember reading about that. Didn't she try to escape from her father's estate in the UK?
Yeah, she was just a teenager then. She managed to get away for a bit, even contacted a lawyer to seek asylum. I think she even talked to British authorities briefly.
Really? So close. Then what happened?
Well, before anything could really happen, she was, get this, kidnapped right off the streets of Cambridge and forcibly returned to Dubai.
Hold on. Kidnapped. In the UK. And the authorities just let that happen.
It's pretty disturbing, right? The Cambridge police started investigating, but things kept getting blocked, and eventually the case was basically shut down.
I bet that's where the whole UK-UAE relationship comes in, and all the political and economic factors at play.
Yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole we'll have to explore. But for now, let's get back to Sheikha Latifah. Her 2018 escape attempt, I mean, that was like something straight out of a movie.
Seriously, it was meticulously planned over years, right? Martial arts training, underwater escape.
Oh yeah, the whole 9 yards. She even recruited a former French naval officer to help her and smuggled out videos explaining why she was running, just in case things went south.
She knew the risks, but she was willing to take them.
Absolutely. She'd already been imprisoned and tortured after a previous escape attempt in her early 20s. But that experience and her sister's disappearance just made her more determined.
So how did she actually manage to escape? I read about a car, a dinghy, even jet skis.
It was pretty wild, multi-stage operation. First, she crossed the border into Oman, hidden in a car. Then she used the dinghy and jet skis to reach a yacht waiting for her in international waters.
Sounds like something out of a spy novel. And for a while, it seemed like she'd actually pulled it off. There's that photo of her sleeping on the deck of the yacht under the stars.
It was like a glimpse of the freedom she was so desperately craving. But, it didn't last.
Because just 30 miles off the coast of India, the yacht was stormed by Indian commandos.
Yeah, acting on Sheikh Mohammed's request, Latifah and everyone with her were captured and sent back to Dubai.
I vaguely remember when this story hit the news. But how did her father pull this off? Capturing her in international waters, I mean.
Well, this is where his power gets really scary. He used Interpol red notices, essentially international arrest warrants, to accuse Latifah's rescuers of kidnapping.
Wow. And it gets worse. He made a deal with the Indian Prime Minister, exchanging an arms dealer, Christian Michel, who was involved in a huge Indian defense scandal, for Latifah.
It just shows the kind of leverage Sheikh Mohammed has.
So this goes way beyond family drama. We're talking international political maneuvering, using global systems to his advantage. Man, this is heavy stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. Makes you wonder how much power really matters in the world, you know?
For sure. So what happened to Latifah after she was taken back to Dubai? The articles mentioned, like secret messages, videos, almost like a hostage situation.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was, at least for the first year or so. Solitary confinement, no contact with the outside world, no lawyers, no one.
But she still managed to get messages and videos out, right?
Right. It seems she had a smuggled phone. She was able to describe what was happening to her, the conditions she was being kept in.
Those videos are tough to watch. Seeing someone so full of life, so determined, reduced to that state.
I agree. But it also shows how strong she is. Finding ways to communicate, to resist being silenced, despite everything. Those videos were more than just pleas for help.
They were really to fight back.
Exactly. But then the videos stopped, and a whole new narrative started coming out of Dubai. Photos of Latifah in public, looking happy, healthy, even meeting with Mary Robinson, the former Irish president.
I remember that. It seemed so strange at the time. What was really going on?
Well, Sheikh Mohammed and the Dubai government went into damage control mode, trying to counter all the negative press about Latifah's capture. They released photos and videos to make it look like she was doing fine, even set up those meetings with high-profile people like Mary Robinson to add some legitimacy to their claims.
But even back then, there was a lot of skepticism about those appearances. It felt like a publicity stunt.
And for good reason. The official story was full of holes, conflicting reports about those meetings, and the Dubai government was anything but transparent. Even Mary Robinson admitted later that she felt she'd been misled by them.
So who do you believe? On one hand, you've got Latifah's own terrifying accounts. On the other hand, these staged public appearances. It's like a giant he said, she said situation.
Except the stakes are way higher. And this is where the story of Princess Haya comes in, Sheikh Mohammed's youngest wife.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. She fled to the UK with her kids in 2019. Huge scandal. A princess running away from a life that seemed like a fairy tale. But how does that tie in with Latifah?
In a few ways. First, it backs up the claims of a controlling and abusive environment within Sheikh Mohammed's family. Princess Haya's testimony during the custody battle that followed, well, it was shocking. And a lot of what she said lined up with what Latifah had been saying.
So now, it wasn't just Latifah's word against her father's. Another woman from inside the royal family was confirming the same patterns of abuse.
Right. And here's the kicker. The UK High Court, when deciding the custody case, officially accepted that both Latifah and Shamsa had been kidnapped and detained.
Wow, that's a big deal. A court of law, a neutral party acknowledging the facts.
It forced the UK to react, to acknowledge what had happened.
You'd think so. I mean, they couldn't just ignore those kidnappings anymore. They were involved, at least indirectly. So what do?
Well, that's where things get frustrating again. Even with the court's findings, even with all the evidence against Sheikh Mohammed, the UK government's response was pretty weak. Some concerns, some calls for proof that Latifah was alive, but no real action to hold anyone accountable.
Sounds like they were trying to sweep it under the rug, protect their relationship with the UAE, even if it meant ignoring what happened to these women.
Yeah, it's hard to see it any other way. The UK has a lot at stake with the UAE, economic, security. Some say those interests are more important to them than human rights.
It's a tough truth to swallow. If someone like Sheikh Latifah, with all her wealth and connections, can be silenced, if international law means so little in these cases, what hope is there for the rest of us?
That's the question that sticks with you after diving into this story. It exposes the limits of justice on a global scale, the way power and politics often override everything else.
And it really makes you think about how much we depend on those in power to do the right thing, to protect the vulnerable. When those systems break down, when those in charge choose their own interests over basic human rights, it paints a pretty grim picture of the world.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing to think about. Someone just disappears and the world kind of moves on. So what can we even do when it feels like the people in charge are basically untouchable?
I mean, it can feel overwhelming, right? But I think raising awareness is huge. Sheikha Latifah's story wouldn't have gotten this much attention without her friends and supporters and journalists, people who refuse to let her be forgotten. So shining a light on these situations is a good first step. But doesn't that create a problem too? I mean, does all the media attention actually help? Or could it make things worse for Latifah and her sisters?
That's the tricky thing about public pressure, I guess. On one hand, it can force governments to acknowledge what's happening, makes it harder to just, pretend nothing's wrong. But it could also backfire. Put more pressure on the people being held, make their captors crack down even harder.
It's a tough spot to be in. Stay silent, and these women might be forgotten. Speak out, and you might be putting them in more danger. What's the right answer?
Honestly, I don't think there is a perfect answer. But we can be smart about it, stick to the facts, rely on credible sources, and most importantly, amplify the voices of the people directly affected. Like Latifah's own words in those videos she managed to get out.
Right, informed awareness is key.
Yeah.
But what can regular people actually do? Is this just how the world works? Power wins and justice loses.
I refuse to believe that. Look, we can support human rights organizations, especially those working on women's rights in the Middle East. We can contact our elected officials, put pressure on them to prioritize human rights, and keep talking about these issues, keep the pressure on.
It sounds simple, but I bet it's anything but easy. Especially when you think about all the other factors at play, like how dependent the UK is on the UAE for trade and security.
No, it's a huge uphill battle. But change rarely comes easy. Public pressure has led to real change in other countries with bad human rights records. It's not impossible, but it takes a lot of people pushing in the same direction.
Wow, this whole conversation's been a roller coaster. Anger, sadness, frustration, but also a sliver of hope, I guess. Maybe things can actually change.
It's a complicated story for sure, but it's important to remember the real people at the heart of it. Sheikh Latifah, Shamsa, Princess Haya, they're not just headlines. They're women who wanted something more out of life. We can't forget their stories.
Well said. Today has been a powerful reminder. Freedom isn't something we can take for granted. Even people born into incredible privilege can still crave something more. And speaking truth to power, even when it's hard, is so important. Thank you for taking this deep dive with me. It's been really eye-opening.
Of course, it's these kinds of conversations that can spark change.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with more deep dives, uncovering more hidden truths and getting you thinking. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.